Oh boy, I'm so thrilled to have her back. It's been a hot minute. I tell this woman all the time when I see her, we just got to do the Kate Casey when it comes to podcasting, and I will
Oh,
explain what that means. But Kate Casey with the Unbelievable podcast, how are you? Thank you for coming back.
I'm well. I'm so like weepy when you say stuff like that. It really
Oh,
means a
really?
lot to me. And we look like relatives right now as I look at us. Don't we?
Look a lot like reality life with Kate Casey. I'm going to tell you why I say that, and you can cry. I'll cry. I'm an emotional wreck. I have so much going on in my life anyway. But
I know you
truly,
do. I know you do.
oh, it's too much. But
Yeah.
no, I say this with all sincerity. You have been the topic of conversation with myself and David Yontif for the past 4 years. You don't even know it. And what I admire so much about your show is you stay steady, Kate. Podcasters chase everything, including myself. Social media videos, different things they're posting, different content, different days of the week. Kate Casey has stuck with exactly what she knows, has built on it. You never get rattled when, all these trends come up in podcasts. Do video, post your video on Spotify. You're going to make all this money. Kate stays tried and true, stays top of the charts. We just honestly, David and I, when we have these moments of like, should we be doing this? Should we be doing that? We go, what would Kate Casey do?
Oh, it's so nice.
Reality life.
It's so nice because over the years, almost 9 years now, I fret like all people in business about stuff like that. And I remember even when I wrote a blog, people would say, well, I remember I would write about pop culture and I would write about parenting and TV, and they would say, you got to stick to one thing. And I always remember thinking, I can only be myself. And I feel like if you set the tone, people will follow you. So if you just talk about or write about or do the things that you like and people like you, they'll follow you wherever you guide them.
Oh, it has that been your strategy? Really, I wanted you to come back here and say,
Mhm.
okay, what's the secret here? You've been doing this when David and I do everything under the sun. What's been your strategy for 9 years? You nailed it.
Well, when I was growing up, if somebody asked me, like, well, what do you want to do for a living? And I would say, well, I really love politics, but I also love all things celebrities and I love sports. It was like like these buckets. And I think the beauty of the podcast is, especially covering unscripted TV, I can just hit all of those things that I really like. And I feel like people will say to me, I didn't think that I liked sports, or I didn't think I liked politics, or I didn't think I liked this until reframed it. And I think the common thread of all these things is that I just love stories about people. I have a photographic memory. I used to sit on the floor of my mom's bedroom and look through her yearbook and ask questions about everyone in her class, the streets they lived on, the parents' names, and I think that that's at the core of like what interests me. And as I branch out, that includes like the stories that are featured in documentaries or reality shows or nonfiction books, because it's all kind of goes back to that, like who somebody is and what their story is.
And you, boy, have you stuck to it. You've really stuck to it, whether it's, like you said, been with true crime or pop culture guests or sports. I mean,
Because it all goes back to that, right? If you watch a sports doc, there are people like I have a friend who is like, I never cared about sports, but now I get it because I mean, kind of like the sport that they play is, kind of like number six on the number, like the things you want to talk about. It always starts with someone's family of origin. Like, who are your parents? Where did you grow up? What is your culture? And then you kind of build out from that. I remember I was talking to someone who is in the CIA. She's featured in the American Manhunt Osama bin Laden doc series, which I highly recommend.
just started.
It's like a
Amazing.
college class. It's
Amazing.
unbelievable. But so Tracy Walder, so she's featured in it. She was
She the
the
blonde. Which one?
yes,
Okay.
yep. And so she was talking about being abroad and uh, when you're in the CIA and you have to have these conversations with, people that you're trying to get information out of. And I don't know what came. I said, in all the years that I've been interviewing people, and this predates podcasting, what I did previously too, is like, I know that there are two things that I can talk to anybody in the world about that won't upset anybody. I can ask them about their grandmother Grandmothers are safe. Grandfathers sometimes a little tricky, parents tricky. Grandmothers are always safe. If I ask anybody around the world, tell me about your grandmother, it puts them in a soft place. And I can also ask, tell me about the food that you ate growing up.
Mm.
It's an easy topic. And then from there, I can always kind of branch out. Okay, well, when you would eat that kind of food, like in whose home would you eat it? Did you help cook the meal? And then it goes into their family, like who was at the table and what were they like and where did they grow up? And I find that the more you ask people questions, the more it's like disarms them and then you find commonality. And I think that's what I love about unscripted TV is that it's an exploration of someone's personal story. And as you watch it, even if you don't feel like it's totally similar to yours, you find things about that person that relate to you and it makes them seem like a much more warm version of the person that you thought.
How did you become such a good interviewer? Like, did you listen? Because Howard Stern was one of the people that, as he
Yeah,
advanced in his career, he was one of the people I would listen to and be like, okay,
I
what
love
is it
him.
that Howard, oh my God, obsessed. What is it that Howard does, that makes this so good? Like, what did you study people? Did you listen back at your stuff? How did you become such a good interviewer?
Well, I think that when you grow up in a big family, like I did, you spend a lot of time observing people and you can't always be the person that gets the attention. And then I went to a boarding school when I was a freshman and I lived in a student home with 16 girls and you kind of have to pay attention. I also think, unfortunately, that when you grow up in a dysfunctional family and you've been around a traumatic situation, you have to spend a lot of time paying attention to people, their body movements, their speech, in order to figure out if you're safe or not. So that's kind of a skill that you get attuned to. And then when I worked in crisis PR and media strategy, I'd have to talk to reporters all day and my clients and really find out what their headaches are in their business and figure out ways to promote them. But I also think I have something that a lot of people have, which is like this intuitiveness. Like sometimes I can't explain it. I kind of call it a mad genius kind of aspect, is that I feel like I have a sense of intuition that when I talk to somebody, I don't know how to explain it, but I know, I feel like I know something about them. Like I'm getting messages in some way. It's hard to explain, where I just know where to guide.
You're like the medical medium for podcasting. I'm like, I'm like, yes. Kate, have you talked a lot? I know you weave it in on your show, but I mean, you're so open about your family life, like all of your trauma. Have you ever done
Yeah.
a multi-part series on what you've been through? Because I think every time we talk about things
Yeah,
that happen,
started it. Yeah.
you did.
Well, the Saturday, so I started out with one episode a week and then I've kind of added episodes over the years and then I added a Monday what to watch episode. And there was a time like, I don't know, more than 2 years ago where I said, I feel like I should kind of tell people more about myself because maybe then they'll understand why I ask the questions I do and the lens through which I look at life. So it was like 600 episodes. Episode 631 was the first one. And I called it the Saturday series. And I started with the first chapter kind of my personal story, the home that that I grew up in, and how my father was estranged and I was with this abusive stepfather. And I would go off to this boarding school for underprivileged kids. So it started with that episode. And then a week later, started to tell the story of my father. And then the week after that, about going to boarding school and then being in DC. And I'm a White House intern during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And it was just every Saturday I kind of added on to it. And then I started to add interviews with my mom and then interviews with the best friend that I had growing up and kind of shaping the story. And then I would talk to my father, but you can't record and put it on air if in the state of Pennsylvania where he lives. So I'd have to like get transcripts and then kind of talk through like this is what he said to me. So it's been part of my story, but there's far more information to it. That's kind of happened over the years. So to answer your question, I would love to compile it. My dream has always been to write a book. Um,
Yeah, girl, you need to.
And I love to do that. But I have also talked to documentary filmmakers because I also think there's like a documentary in it. Essentially, what people should know is my father was estranged from me. And I reconnected with him when I was about 32, 33 years old. And what I now believe is he probably was either a spy or working as a double agent in Ireland during the Troubles.
And okay, wait a minute. This is like a whole other, all right. So why then did he leave your family? Do you feel like it was
I think
psychological, like the pressure of that, or
it predates me. I think that when he went off to the Vietnam War, he was stationed as a military police officer in Germany. I think he got radicalized. I think because of his home life, he was an only child. They had a stillborn baby, but he was raised as an only child, and he had a really like a father who was really strong in his Irish culture, and my grandmother was strong in her English culture, and I think that was like an obsession. And then I think he got radicalized during the war, and I think he probably, I mean, to be honest with you, I really think that he chose my mom as like a cover family. I don't think he was really in love with her. And so he married my mom, he had my sister, and then I think I was probably some sort of mistake. And he just disappeared. And in reflection, my mom and I are going through the story. She's having these realizations, which to me sound so obvious that this was not a real marriage. But I think because of her own life circumstances, she didn't really see it that way. But I mean, she's
well,
at
and
one
back
point,
then, I mean, back then, it wasn't like back then you could like,
absolutely.
oh, hey, let me Google these red flags. Does this seem
I
like,
mean,
I
there's
mean,
so many. Like in one episode, she said, "Do you remember when you were four and the SWAT team showed up?" And I was like, "What?"
wow.
I'm like, "Well, when they left, did it concern you?" She's like, "Well, I just thought they got the wrong house." And then you realize he probably chose her because she was so naive. So do I think that he chose my mom for a loving marriage? No. Do I think that I was, part of this plan to have this like these kids? I think it was probably like a cover family. And in talking to him as an adult, there's some complications to it because I think I know he's extremely guarded about information. Once in a while, like something will slip out, but it's been an exploration. Also because the culture, that I was raised obviously in the suburbs of Philadelphia, but culturally my whole family is Irish English and they're very private. Like I make jokes about Karen Reed where people are like, how could all these people keep a secret? I'm like, have you ever met Irish people? Like they keep secrets. So it's it's been a process, but I interviewed a documentary filmmaker one time and his father had been in the CIA. And in talking about the projects, I said, I kind of shared my little story. And he said to me that he found that people who had parents that were in FBI or really mostly CIA, they had gone into journalism or documentary filmmaking. And I said, of course we do, because we don't know who our parents are, and it's a lifelong journey to figure out who they are. So there's probably a big part of that too, is that I talk to people because I didn't feel like I got hurt as a child, but also because I'm trying to figure out who my parents are.
So you've reconnected with your dad. Do you feel now, you said he's quite guarded still, but do you feel
Mhm.
like some things have been answered, or it's like you now know where he is, you guys speak, but
Well, it's sort of like motherhood. When you become a mom and you feel like some holes are filled, but then new ones are opened because you're confronted with what you may have lacked or you process things differently. It's sort of like that, where I feel like, okay, well, that makes sense, but then four more holes open.
mm.
Mm.
What happened? I guess what part of your story do people connect with the most with the trauma?
Um,
Is it a parent leaving, or is it an abusive stepfather? Is it you and your mom's connection? What's the part that you get the most response
I
to?
think my dad, I think for sure my dad, to be abandoned by a parent, for them to completely disappear is really hard. I read this
Wow.
Harvard Business Review article, I don't know how many years ago, but it was about your business acumen. And they had connected that a CEO's business point of view or not even that, like who they are, their DNA is based on their relationship with their parent. And they said that that people who have had parents that abandon them work exponentially harder because they're trying to impress a parent that will never show up to say you did a good job. So they cited like Barack Obama and President Clinton and some other people. And I thought, I'm in that category where I'm spending all my time and I'm cognizant of it and I still do it. I'm almost like, I want to prove to him you're an idiot. And I think to some degree he may feel a sliver of that because he really wants my attention now. I will not give it to him because why would I? But yeah, it's this like fruitless journey where you're so, especially as a parent, and you know this, like
Yeah.
I miss my kids when I go to the CVS.
Oh,
How could you not show up? And one time I asked him, didn't you want to drive past my house and see I was okay? And his answer was, well, no, because you were an American. I'll try to unravel that one.
yeah. Yeah. That's so hard to unravel, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. Once you become a parent, you're like, you realize how is sick the right word? I don't know. Your dad, there's a mystery there, right? But it's like something has to be so wrong for
Uh-huh.
someone to walk out on your own kids. Like it just something's got to be so off, because to your
Yeah.
point, like once you have them and you see how they will like follow you into a fire, I mean, they just like you're their whole world. So something's
Yeah.
got to be so off that you could walk out
Well,
that door.
one thing I have to say, and this is sort of like new agey,
Yeah, yeah, tell me, yeah.
but in reflection of my life, and I recommend all people kind of do this, like, I mean, like, you just write a timeline of your life, right? Like things, the big things that happen. And I was telling you that before I met my husband, Dan, I was married for a short time to someone in the military. I met them in college. I moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I'm there for a little bit. And it wouldn't make sense on paper. You would go, okay, this person was not a good fit for you emotionally, physically. Like he was from California. Of course, I ended up moving to California, but like the dynamics of it just don't make sense, right? But then I'm like, well, first of all, one of the things that happened then when I was there, I met a bunch of great friends. I had an experience where I came in contact with somebody that I now know was a 9/11 terrorist. So that's like another weird part of my story. But
What?
the other thing was I was witness to the military lifestyle. And when I was there, I could see how people got radicalized or compromised. Like I lived in a neighborhood with all Navy SEALs. So they would get married and they would leave for deployment for 6 to 12 months and they would come back and they were not the same people. And I think that's a byproduct of like coping and tactic and all of that. And if I had not witnessed it for myself, I would have never been able to understand that. I think that people who work for governments or militaries, there you have to shut yourself down as a way of survival. Even the the Osama bin Laden manhunt. The last episode, they talked with the SEALs, and they said we knew that we might die before we did Operation Jawbreaker, and we really had to say goodbye to our families. And I think that when people leave, I think there is a part of them emotionally that just turns it off. I think he turned the volume all the way down. And if I had never lived in a military town, I would have never gotten it. So I'm grateful. Although it didn't make sense at the time. I was like, why did I get married? And for a short time, and like this was not me. This was not part of my life plan. I'm not like this. But I'm grateful because in the long term of my life, it helped me so much.
Is that what you were meaning by new age? Because I love that. To
Yeah.
me, that's like, don't you feel like everything happens for a reason? Like
Yeah.
when you begin to go, okay, there's a reason why I'm here. Every single thing
Uh-huh.
doesn't make sense in the moment, but then
Yeah.
5 years down the road, you look back, you're like, oh my God, if that hadn't
Well,
happened, I wouldn't have known this and this and
yeah.
this person.
Well,
Wow.
even with like, so I was living in Virginia Beach and living in this neighborhood. It was called Runaway Bay Apartments. It was the day before my birthday, and I went across the street to mail something. And I paid and I turned around and I was right. This man was behind me. And I can take myself back to that moment. taller than me, very dark, dark, dark eyes. The way he looked at me was with just pure distaste and evil. As I walked away, I remember I said out loud, well, that guy didn't like me. And I went home. Well, September 11th happens. My husband at the time is on deployment. My sister is in one of the World Trade Center buildings, World Trade Center 7. And the whole day is just like, like everybody else, just what is going on? I can't find my sister. And then they show the pictures of the hijackers. And I immediately recognized Mohammed Atta. So
Yeah.
I call my mom, and my mom says, call the FBI. So I call the FBI and I tell them all the details where I was. And, the photographic memory comes in handy for that kind of stuff. Um, so it's like 6 months later on the news in Hampton Roads area, they put on the news that Mohammed Atta had been staying at a hotel, which was maybe like a quarter of a mile down the street from the apartment complex in which I lived. And years later, I interviewed Gareth Graff, who wrote The Oral History of 9/11. And in the interview, or before the interview, I did like a write up. And I thought, well, maybe I should tell that story about how, I lived there and looking for my sister and all this stuff. Oh, and my friend from college was a first responder at the Pentagon. So I'm like writing about all this stuff. And I did a news search and I found an article that said a tip to the FBI about April 3rd, 2001 in, Virginia Beach had like placed Mohammed Atta at this mail depot, which was the place. It wasn't like a UPS store. It was like a mom and pop shop, which why would they do that? Because there probably weren't security cameras, right? And they had placed them there and it helped like unravel the story that two of the hijackers had been in Virginia Beach, and what they now believe is that they were casing the military bases, and that they may have wanted to fill up a vessel with explosives and go into the port in Norfolk.
Wow.
So in the long scheme of my life, I'm like, I'm such an observant person and the photographic memory. And then it's like all these years later, I've interviewed the people that have made almost every September 11th related documentary, written books. And I think it's propelled me to like dig into a lot of these historical moments because I feel like I'm tied to it. So again, the new agey thing, it's like if you look at your whole life, the people you met, the places that you lived, the places that you worked, there is a common thread. It's just, we don't always pay attention because we get in the throes of our days.
Oh, heck yeah. Uh, 9/11, did anything to this day surprise you? Like, I don't know. Do
I
you,
still think of all the time about the fifth plane. And Gareth Graff wrote a book about it.
yeah.
And
Oh,
they made a
no, what did
documentary about
happen?
it too. There was a fifth plane that was going to take off that morning. And I think there were some delays. And that's the reason it didn't take off. And there were men who matched the similar description of the other hijackers that were in the first class of this plane. I believe it was going to take off from Newark. And there were people on the plane that just noticed some strange behaviors. And so then they shut down all the planes and they, over the intercom, they said, we can't take off. Everybody has to go back. And it was like all those people got off the plane and it was just bizarre. And it was like they just disappeared. And now we also know that there were practice runs too. I mean, the actor James Woods has said, and maybe even Rob Lowe, they were on planes before that. In retrospect, they feel like they were practice routes.
Oh,
So
I'm
I think about that. I think
jealous.
about
Holy shit.
all of those practice routes who were on those planes. I think about the flight attendants who were like unbelievable in that moment. I mean, they knew they were going to die and how they rose up. I think that for me, the 9/11 thing too, I think Anna and I talk about this. I think a lot of this makes sense too. And maybe why I am so obsessed with 9/11 is I felt like at that moment in our lives, we were all connected.
Uh,
Everyone cared about everyone else's family. Are you okay? We were checking in with each other. And I think, and all the stories that I like every day, still, on my Instagram, it's like 9/11 people pop up every day. There's like, I get a reminder every day of somebody who died in 9/11, their birthday. And sometimes I'm like, let me go see who that person is. And my sister lives in New Jersey. And sometimes I'll find out that person was from like her area. And I'll go, do you know this family? She's like, oh, yeah, they went to school with them. And it's like they still live because their stories are being told. And I think that's what I like about unscripted is like I just feel like everybody has a story. And people
Yeah.
get so like caught up in their lives. And I'm like, my daughter, this is like just to show you just how it like trickles down with my kids. My daughter had gone to DC for like a week long trip for eighth grade and she went to the Vietnam Memorial. And I remember she came back, she said that really was the one that like stayed with me. And it was like a couple weeks later, and she said, remember I told you I like the Vietnam Memorial where there was this one name that stuck out at me, a stranger's name. And she like did the etching. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And I'm like, I wonder what his story was. And she said, well, I looked it up. He was from El Paso. He was 19. This is what his name was. And I was like, I should do an episode with her where we find who that family was.
Yeah, isn't it? I know. Everybody does have a story, don't they? It's like
Yeah.
unreal. People,
That's why I think we like Sister Wives, like you and I like, because
I'm
for
obsessed.
us, it's not, it's like people, most people go, oh, like it's polygamy, but I'm just like, I know we've been watching these for years. And I'm like,
So much
what
more
is,
than that.
I'm like, what's Logan's like life like every day? You know, like that's the stuff I think about.
It frustrates me to some degree that TLC doesn't tell more of their story because we get, I think, such an
Yeah.
edited version now. And look, I'm sure part of it's because it's been on for 19 seasons, but I love that you brought that up. What is your take on that show? Like, I like how you just said, a lot of people see it surfacey that it's about polygamy.
Yeah.
What is it for you that's been interesting or fascinating to see about that show?
I think women love that show because, and we've played the long game of it by watching all these years because we all, from the beginning, have realized that it was a matter of a man who had control over four women, and it's this deep desire for us to find their power, and that's why we stay.
What do you think is the future of that show?
I think you have to explore the kids' lives if you're gonna like still talk about it. The problem is none of those kids want to be in that lifestyle, but you could just explore like the afterlife of it. Like, how does that affect the people that you choose, the way you structure your family? Do you still keep in touch with your relatives? I mean, their story, I think, is similar to those of that are in Scientology or Nexium or any of these things. It's like, what is the afterlife of a cult? It is a cult. They have cult-like beliefs and behaviors. So to me, that's the next phase is like, what are the lasting How close are the kids? The thing that still sticks with me though, that I feel like I can't uncrack is like, what really happened with Mary? Like, what kind of parent was she? And do the kids still harbor resentment about it? And the other is, what is Robin's true story? Like, is there
Hello, we need it. What is it?
like was she the child of a lot of abuse and we've never been able to kind of crack that open? Is she more cunning? What did she marry into this family because of the money? Did she see it as like a because it seems like she's got maybe a spending problem and a hoarding problem. Like, is this about money? Does she want power? But then at the same time, you feel like she's rattled because now she has to spend all this time with him. And then, Cody, I think we kind of have figured him out over the years, but I think those are the two stories that I feel like I figured out Christine. I figured out Janelle. I'm fine. But the kids and the real story, the backstory on Mary and Robin or what I'm still kind of hanging out
There's always
for.
these rumors out there that TLC is going to almost do like a spin-off with the three women and maybe some of the kids. I mean, do you hear that? Do you think that's see, I don't see a life where they'll do that show without Cody. I think behind the scenes,
Yeah.
what I hear, they all like the production, the guy that originally started it and pitched it, they all like really like Cody. So it's like I don't know. I mean, I don't see a show where they're going to do that without him. But
I kind of feel like that belief system maybe like women watch that and they're so angry at Cody and they like to get fired up and that's what keeps people like coming back for every episode. I think they're wrong. I think I think it's really more about the women finding their power. But I've realized this over the years is that a lot of the decisions that are made at these networks are by men, and what they believe is ridiculous because I can say for housewives and sister wives, like it's a female audience. And the reasons we're watching are totally different from what they've concocted in their own brains. I did a search. Did I text this to you? I should have. Did I send this to you? About, I asked this question of ChatGPT about like why why more men appear in like talk shows when it comes to like reality shows, like what their opinions are, or podcasters or whatever. And in particular for Bravo, it said, like Watch What Happens Live, is that that show is really snarky and they tend to choose people that are snarky about them. But that women, they don't always choose women because women look at these shows differently. We're looking at the sociology. And that is not like one-liners and, you know, kind of like punchy, but that's the audience. That's what we care about. We care about the sociology behind it.
God, that's so good. I mean, look, I can tell you this, if TV doesn't change, I mean, I grew up in radio and radio is completely dead because of exactly what you said. It was run by, I can remember my last radio job in DC at Mix 1073. It was like DC's 1073, all run by like 60, 70-year-old men because the audience they wanted was 30-year-old women.
Yeah.
There wasn't a 30-year-old woman in or a 40-year-old woman in any managerial site platform or position in sight. You couldn't find one. And it's like I
Yeah.
just watched that business for almost 10 years. They just bled it dry. They didn't know anything about the female audience. And it's so and look at what's happened now with
Mhm.
podcast. And I had a female program director tell me, this was like in 2010, because they were always like, what do you want to do at iHeart? And I was like, I want to have my own show. And they were like, you can't, you're not going to host your own show without a guy. Like, women don't want to
So
hear women.
crazy.
But then they ended up sinking themselves. I mean, iHeart doesn't even mention radio anymore. Maybe
I would love
Charlamagne
you to interview that idiot,
the God. Oh, my old radio boss?
the one who said that, and be like, what do you think now about all of the women? I feel like the election showcased the power of podcast. People who kind of like rolled
Right.
their eyes at what we do for so long. I think the election really showed
I say that
people
all the time. Yeah.
want an audio experience because audio experiences are intimate. People want intimacy. They do. They want to feel like they have someone that's talking to them in their head, that they have this connection. Television stars are not going to DM you. Podcasters will because we like conversation. We like connection.
Where do you think the future of Bravo lies? I probably my show's more known for covering TLC shows, which I am obsessed with, and it will be interesting to see if TLC can even survive the next like 5 years, 10 years. But what about Bravo? There's always so much discourse there. Like
Yeah.
they're trying to launch new shows, but I mean these shows now, Kate, I know for a fact you get more monthly downloads than some of these episodes. These episodes are getting
Yeah.
300,000 downloads. Watch What Happens Live some nights, 270,000 downloads. I guarantee you get quadruple that in a month. I mean,
Yeah.
what is the future of Bravo? Or are you more positive than I am?
I think my dream is always to like run a network, like a television
Oh, you'd
network,
be
because I
so
feel
good.
like I would be so good at that. I think what their strength is are ensemble shows. And so I think that they should lean into that and they have to skew younger. Like Real Housewives of Rhode Island is, I think, women that are probably in their early 30s. And you want stuff like that because then the audience can kind of grow with them and kind of watch their lives. I think to just kind of hang your hat on a group of women that are like in their 60s now, and like the people kind of like they tune out. A lot of those housewives, I'm like, I know your life. I got it. Like, we're good. We want fresh new ideas. And I think the housewives would, when it's at its best, reflects the women of that city and the culture and, you know, kind of like who lives there. Like Miami is my favorite because they're so dissimilar to the way that other women in the country are. And I like to kind of feel like I'm a voyeur, like I'm getting a window into their life experiences. And they have lives well lived. So I think if they choose different cities, do ensemble shows, and choose women that have lives well lived, they're not influencers. They're women who reflect their audiences, which are women who are trying to raise children or build businesses or navigate older parents or you look at your own friend group and you have friends with so many different life experiences, and I think shows like that should reflect it, but I think that's what they're really good at, and they should just lean more into that instead of trying to create programming that is so dissimilar to that. Like, I'm thrilled with the idea of Real Housewives of Rhode Island or Real Housewives of Chicago. I would love a Real Housewives of mainline Philadelphia. I mean, I think if you go to any dinner
Philly
party
women.
anywhere in the United States of America, in Australia, in the UK, and said, where should there be a city about Real Housewives, you would have an hour-long fun conversation.
Oh yeah. Chicago's a good one.
I can't wait for Ladies of London too. Like, I love that stuff.
What for you? I mean, because you've branded yourself. I mean, you have a what to watch every single week, which is a guide for everybody. I mean, Donnie Wahlberg it wants to know what is on. Like, I want to know. For you, what are some of the best shows that Bravo has right now?
Bravo. Real Housewives of Miami. I just think those women, you know
I
what I love
never
about them?
watch. All right, now I gotta watch.
Okay.
Okay.
Like
Never
Alexia, for
watched.
example. Like, what a life well lived. I mean, she's married to a guy that was like in the cocaine mafia. She has two children that are have their own life's complexities. She's got friends that have, their own life circumstances, and she's unapologetically flawed. That's what you like. The new kind of like Real Housewives of New York that they brought back, it was like women that were trying to be television personalities and were really curated. And I don't think that works. I think you get somebody who has had a couple marriages, ran a couple businesses. Like, they've had a lot of more failures than successes, because that's more interesting for me. You're going to get
Very
more, they're going to
much.
have much more um, interesting conversations and advice. You want to see someone who has like an interesting family life. I just, somebody like I said, like a life well lived versus some of the other shows where like Summer House to me seems really kind of just
I can't.
boring,
I
because
can't.
it's just like people laying in beds for 2 days, over the week, and they're not really having thoughtful, interesting conversations. And a lot of it just feels like immature. I think the Bravo audience is probably really like 25 to 65, and mostly women. And they want to see a reflection of who they are and the kind of friends that they have.
What do you think happened with New York? And do you believe the network when they say, "Oh no, it's not canceled. It's coming back"?
I think that they really want to have a great cast. And I know that it wasn't working. And I think they want to take their time, and that's a good thing. You need the casting is really makes all the difference in the world. Now, again, like, I think every show should be a reflection of that city. To me, New York is a finance city. Like,
Hmm.
Beverly Hills works because it's an entertainment city, and
Yeah,
every single woman adds some sort of element to it. Like, I'm fascinated watching Beverly Hills because
love.
Sutton has an enormous amount of money, but she's not that's through finance. She doesn't have power. And that to me is like an interesting element of it. Like, it doesn't matter how much money she has, she can never buy a ticket into social circles there. And that frustrates her. That's interesting to me, that Kyle and her sisters have had proximity to this business, but the way that people see them and like what is power and what is perceived power. So I would like that reflected in New York, where you see women that are connected to the finance world, whether they work in it or their spouse works in it, and the different levels of it. Like, does someone who works in hedge funds look down on somebody who works for like a consulting firm? That to me is what the New York story should be.
Why do you think though they've had? I feel like they have a really hard time casting in New York though. Like I feel like the people you're
Well,
talking about, they don't want to be on camera. It was like DC.
Well, also, like with DC and New York, it depends on the media policy of the place that you work. However, I think times are changing because more people are uh, creating their own businesses and companies. So if somebody works in finance, they're probably going to start their own consulting firm or their own hedge fund. Like, for example, if you watch the show uh, Race for the Crown, it's on Netflix and it's about horse racing.
Okay.
There's a couple that looks so Real Housewives of New York. I mean, he is in like Gucci glasses, tight white shirt, like a necklace that could tug a boat, spray tan, and the wife is like all done. And I was like, that they would be fantastic. He's in hedge funds. Hedge fund people, they don't need, they write the rules. So I
Oh,
think that maybe they were
yeah.
looking at like somebody who's like number three. You don't want the number three, you want the number one.
Hmm. Yeah.
And also, like, I just went to my niece's college graduation and she graduated from Loyola Marymount. And one of her friends was telling me like 80% of the kids that graduated don't have jobs yet.
What are they
Like,
gonna do? Like what?
well, I don't know, but I said to them, I went, you know what you have to do? You have to create your own job. I did that. You did that.
Oh my God. Yeah. They all want to be
You,
influencers, probably.
well, whatever it is, you might have to make it. And so they might be great people in New York too, or any of these cities, like somebody who made something themselves because they don't have to worry about their company saying you can't be on camera.
One, switching gears a bit, there's so many interesting trials and lawsuits going on right now, I think, but I'm curious if you think that way. Of the Diddy trial, of the Karen Reed, of the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni lawsuit, any of those pique your interest? Like any of those are you can't stop reading or obsessing about, or you're not that.
I kind of go through phases. Like I did a lot of the Karen Reed, the first trial. So I kind of, it's like a housewife where I'm like, I think I got the point. So I'm now kind of just waiting for the verdict to come back.
Which one do you
Um,
think it will be?
well, I would hope that she's, innocent because I think it's quite obvious that it's, fraught with fraud and dishonest people.
Do you think they really did something to him in the house, or do you think it's
I
like
think they
maybe
did.
you do?
I
Okay.
think they did. I just think it's like this really interesting case of like a small town where everyone knows each other and the cops of the town having a tremendous amount of power and they all cover for each other. Which is a good thing that this the kind of story is highlighted because I would hope that it makes other people think about their own local police departments and like how much power do they have and does everybody cover? Like it's a created a bigger conversation. And Diddy, of course, I'm interested in following that. I like to have lawyers on in big cases like this to kind of break down the strategy behind the prosecution and the defense. The Blake Lively one, for me, because I worked in PR for so long, I think it's an interesting conversation on the power of publicists and
Oh,
also power dynamics with like A-list actors and how I think that it's going to have people take a good look at power in Hollywood and who has it. And when you do have power, how can you destroy somebody else's career or potentially destroy it? I'm always kind of like, what is and this is probably a byproduct of what I did in my first chapter career in crisis media litigation too. And strategy is I was always asking attorneys, like, what are the implications of this? And I think I kind of look at all of those cases that way. Now, my episode on Tuesday, I'm covering the Jennifer Dulos murder. There's a new book out called Murder in the Dollhouse.
I'll
And
love this.
Jennifer Dulos was the beautiful mom in New Canaan, Connecticut, who disappeared, the mom of five, and then her husband was accused, and then he died by suicide.
Yes.
So
They
I'm
never
interested
really,
in stuff like that.
they never figured out. I mean, and he had an
We
affair,
don't know where her
right?
body is. He had an affair.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, right.
there was luminol that was placed on the floor in the garage of the house in which she lived, and there was luminol that revealed there were blood stains, but
Yeah.
the body was never found. I remember the husband and the girlfriend were seen on camera dumping things in different
Yeah.
trash. Like over a period of time, they went on a long car ride, but her body was never found. But the more you dig into that story, you're like, oh, this is a case of coercive control. And her family had a ton of money, and I think he was becoming panicked because they were going through a divorce, and he worked in construction, and her family had been giving him money, and they wanted him to pay the money back. And I think he just completely unraveled.
Just to go back one second with the Blake Lively, because That case is interesting to me because when you were talking about like what are the implications, it's to me, what is the strategy there? What are they trying to do? Do we believe that Blake and Ryan, does she just really believe she was sexually harassed and that her company's tanked because of Wayfair and Justin?
Well, it's hard to say, especially because none of us are privy to all of the discovery. I mean, we may have a different point of view if we all looked at that. It's really hard to say. However, I do think what it has shed a light on is that there are rungs in Hollywood. And when you're at the top, I think a lot of people begin to feel like they can do whatever they want. And if someone's in their way for whatever reason, they can destroy their career and get away with it. And I think that it illuminates this question of like, is this happening all the time? And if so, how can we stop it? And also the power of publicists. Like, what are they doing behind the scenes?
Yeah. So good. That's so fascinating because maybe, maybe a lot of people do feel their end game is, they want Colleen Hoover book rights. They want for Wayfair to give all of that up. I mean, it's just he's Justin Baldoni though is such an interesting target because it's like what was he doing that was really standing in her way? Maybe I don't know, maybe she didn't feel like she was being given enough credit for It Ends With Us or wasn't, there wasn't enough focus. It's just so
Well, I know that there's some people that believe that perhaps maybe she had wanted some sort of intimacy with him and there was a rejection. I mean, I think these are all really interesting conversations. I mean, again, we don't have the benefit of looking through all the discovery, so we have no idea. And I would hope that this would all come out in trial. I think it probably will go to trial.
I thought it would be settled, but I'm beginning to think you're right,
And
I
that's
mean,
a blessing of a trial, is like all of this will come out. And I can only hope that out of it, we have learned something about the inner workings of the entertainment industry. It seems just like a business, and we're in it, and I don't work in movies or anything like that, but
you should.
no, I think that it's good to unravel power dynamics and to see like who has power and how they use it and how can people find their power. Like that's all interesting. It's no different than our obsession right now in DC, like politics.
I know. Do you follow a lot?
DC is just LA, but with ugly people.
It's the Hey, I lived there for 15 years. I gotcha. I mean,
Yeah.
and they're not as attractive, and we don't have as good fashion sense. You come out to California,
Uh-huh.
you're like, oh, I get it. Like, why does Angelina Jolie wear black all the time? And then it's like black is like a whole
Slimming,
statement here.
classy.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
whole thing here. You're like, okay, now I get it. Yeah,
DC,
very different.
you'll see a pleated pant like all
Oh,
day long.
oh
Yeah.
God, and so many blazers. And
Blazers. I know.
Casey keeps Ann Taylor in business.
Ann Taylor, the Ann Taylor around the corner from the National Press Club. I used to shop there.
Everybody does. That was like
Yeah.
everybody was Ann Taylored out.
Yeah.
Look, you've interviewed a lot of amazing guests. Is there anybody still on Kate Casey's like want list?
Yeah, of course. Um, I actually cracked one of those people on my list recently. I interviewed Elizabeth Smart. That
Oh,
was interesting.
that was so good.
Yeah, I would love to interview George H.W. Bush about September 11th. Excuse me, George W. Bush. What am I saying? George W. Bush. I would love to ask him about September 11th. Some of these are you're going to be like, wow, okay.
No, I want to
Michael
interview
Phelps.
you.
I would love
Oh,
to interview Michael Phelps about the
Ryan's girlfriend.
the pressures. Oh, I've interviewed her years ago.
You did?
Yeah.
Was
You
that
know,
real?
Red.
I can't even remember. I know.
I don't know. I kind of the more the time goes on, I'm like, I think that was their imagination. I would love to ask him about the psychological pressures of athletes. The Weight of Gold. He made a documentary on HBO about that. I would love to ask him about that. Um, I don't, yeah, there's
I
just,
know.
I don't,
So
there's
many.
so many.
George W. Bush is such a
Martin
good one.
Short,
Oh, really?
Tina Fey.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Fascinating.
yeah,
George W. Bush is on mine too. There's a guy so hated, now like so loved. I
yeah.
mean, he must love Trump. I mean, Trump's just done like wonders for It's
I don't know
right.
though.
I don't think he does love Trump particularly. And there's something about George W. Bush. I mean, he seems like the coolest, funnest guy to hang out with.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't know. Did he really do so much damage to our country by sending us to the
I
Cold
also
War?
feel like when we're in the thick of things, you want to talk to somebody who's been there and then left and had took a beat,
Yeah.
you know? And like their perspective, I think is always good.
So,
I always like people that have just like a life well lived. That's who I want to talk to.
oh my God. And he's lived a life well lived.
You know who I would like to interview? Like Lorne Michaels, Tina Brown,
Yeah, amazing people.
like people like that. I
Yeah.
think I like, dream guest, Prince Charles.
Really?
Yeah, like what's your life like? Like what do you think
I would.
about
But
everything?
look, if you could crack that nut, if you could
I
crack that
mean,
nut,
Liz,
that
come
would
on.
be would be
Yeah.
epic. Anything? I have two last questions for you. You have to come back, and
Yeah, anytime.
I want you to come back and just like talk about what you would do running a network. Then I want you to come back and just talk about podcast strategy. Then I want you just have so many. You're so good at it. But two,
If I ran a podcast network right now,
have you thought about
I
starting
would
one?
maybe, I don't know, but
You
like
and Heather McDonald have not started a podcast network. I've always thought that would be the Juicy Scoop network.
yeah, I don't think she wants to do that anymore. I think I would just think I think I know, you know what I will say about myself. I'm a good podcast whisperer. Like people will come to me and they're like, I want to do this podcast. I'm like, it's not that. And then like Chris DeRosa came to me and he wanted to do a podcast and we were talking about something about Meghan Markle. And he said, you know what I would tell her? And I went, now that's your podcast. And now it's called Fixing Famous People and it's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, you're really good at seeing like where people should go.
Yeah.
I think a network. I mean, we need like a really unique, well-crafted network.
Yeah. Where it's all the things that you want. Like women, like I would have like a Christiane Amanpour or someone like her that just gives you this is what you need to know about international news this week or today or Then I would have like a doctor, a female doctor, or you could have several. You're like, okay, this is what you need to know everything about, pregnancy or menopause or cancer. Like it would just be like a hit list of all the things that you need to like operate in your week.
Gosh. Okay. Well,
Like somebody who specializes in ADHD, because like I have a child with ADHD, and like that would be super helpful. Like how their brain works, how, when you have a child, like, how you can help them, like all that stuff.
you also have an amazing newsletter, What to Watch
Yes,
every
yes,
week.
yes, yes. I want people to subscribe to that because
Right?
it comes out every Monday and it just gives you a list of like these are the best things to watch. Like this week's list right now, today, there's a two-part documentary that's coming out today on HBO Max about Pee Wee Herman.
I'll be watching that. And you just got me to watch
Totally.
the Brett Favre. I just watched
Brett
Brett
Favre, that one was a
Favre.
good one too. Oh
I
my
didn't
God.
even, I've forgotten about Jen Sturger, the
Yeah,
woman that he sent dick pics to. I even
yeah,
forgot how troubled his career behind the scenes was. That
yeah.
you
A
got to come, then
doozy.
you have to come back and just do a show, an hour show on your favorite sports documentaries. There's been so
There are so many ones. The one you need to
much.
watch right now is my favorite is 100 Foot Wave on HBO Max about Garrett McNamara, who's the big wave surfer. It's perfect for every family. Anytime anybody has asked
Right.
me, What do I watch with my husband and my kids or what?" The two things you want to watch if you have a family right now. Well, your son's really little, but like is the American Manhunt Osama bin Laden and
Watching that.
100 Foot Wave. Those are the ones that my kids who kind of like walk around the house that when they're on, they come in and they watch.
9/11 is so good.
Oh, you know what, too? If you're a woman and you're watching this and you're like, I just want to feel like a warm blanket and inspired, there's a documentary called Finding Vivian Mayer. Have you ever watched this?
No.
Vivian Mayer was a nanny in the 50s and 60s in like Chicago. And she was always mysterious, had a little bit of an accent. She passed away. And left behind all like microfiche, like, little slides. And some young man bought it at an estate sale and decided to look to see what the pictures were. And it revealed the most beautiful street photos in black and white. And in death, she's become this famous photographer where her stuff is in museums. And
Huh?
it's this guy
Okay.
that just printed these. He's like, oh my. So they go back and they interview the kids that she was the nanny for. And they're like, I remember she always had the camera around her, but I had no idea. It's so inspirational.
All right. Well, Reality Life with Kate Casey is the pod. What to watch? You have to subscribe to the newsletter. Kate, you will be back. You have to come
Yes.
back. This was
And you're going to come on mine
beyond.
too. You're going to come on mine too.
I
I'm
can't
going to send you
wait
my list for
anytime.
next week so you know what you have to watch this week or this next week.
I look to you. I watch all the things. I love it. Like I said, the Brett Favre. You'll tell me that maybe we'll watch the Pee Wee and then we'll discuss. I'm
Oh,
sure he did
yeah.
so many fascinating things. So whatever it is, Kate, we'll
Yeah.
be there.
My favorite thing is if somebody writes to me and they said, I watched this with my kids or my husband and I got sucked into the story and I'll never forget it. Like, that's my favorite thing.
Yeah, when you get notes like that, I love it.
Yeah, yeah. Or like somebody will walk past me at a dinner table or something and go, oh my God, I watched blah, blah, blah. And I can't stop thinking about it. And I love that.
Oh, so much, so many good television things out there and good docs. All right, Kate, we
Yeah.
love you. Good to
Thank
see
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice
You
to
too.
see you.